Today we're in one of the University Recruiting Essentials webinar series. The topic today is to create a career fair strategy. My name is Jennifer Rutt, and that's my picture. Whenever I'm on a webinar, I always like to see a picture of the presenter in case I bump into them somewhere at a conference or at another industry event. And then please, if you see me, come up and introduce yourself. My title is Senior Director of Engagement here at After College. That's my contact information, and you can follow me on Twitter. I do tweet out a lot of industry articles as well as research from After College as well as other sources. I've been in the industry for about 15 years. I spent 10 of those years with the National Association of Colleges and Employers. There at NACE, I was the NACE-Link Director of Strategic Alliances, as well as held several other positions and spoke publicly. Through my work, I've intensely spent time with both employers and colleges on their strategy, the research and learning around university recruiting, and also have had an intense focus on how employers use technology as well as other things. I want to give a little shameless plug here at the beginning for my other University Recruiting Essentials webinars that are happening throughout the series. I do several, one on scholarships, one on on-campus events outside of career fairs, one on leveraging interns for your campus brand. I am also working on a student ambassadors based on feedback and desire for that. I recently did one on some after-college research as well. So if you have a topic that you'd like to see included in the University Recruiting Essentials series, please let me know, and I'd be happy to explore the feasibility of doing a whole presentation on it. One more resource, because I am going to be talking about this a little bit as we go through, and I think even if you can't attend all of the other webinars, a lot of the supporting information about the webinars is on our employer blog. And you can subscribe to that employer blog just at employer.aftercollege.com. There's tons of great information and lots of interviews with other folks who are in the industry, best practices, and so forth. So what are the sources for the career fair knowledge that you're going to be hearing about today? All of my webinars in the University Recruiting Essentials series were done from several different pieces of information or sources of knowledge. I did intense interviews with leading university recruiting professionals, so folks who have been in university recruiting for a long time, have well-established programs, folks who are a little newer but also doing cutting-edge things. Some companies, I interviewed professionals with experience at companies like KPMG, Northrop Grumman, Amazon, Stryker, NetApp, BP, CH2M Hill. I also pulled from some after-college business examples with companies like Intel, Airbnb, and the NSA. I did a lot of reading on industry research, articles, and just attending learning sessions myself. And then lastly, simply my time in the field. For years, I've been doing career work with employers in the benchmarking and roundtable formats where they learn and share best practices, and also simply developing the technology that employers would use to implement their university recruiting strategies. So today, what we're talking about are career fairs specifically. As I mentioned earlier, I do have a, pardon me, I have a little frog in my throat, so I apologize if I cough through this. We do have a whole separate webinar on on-campus events outside of career fairs. So for this purpose, we're just focusing on career fairs. We're going to talk about whether or not career fairs are for your company. And then if you decide that they are, where should you be going? We're going to talk about how to prepare for the fair, talk about how to track your ROI or return on investment, and we're going to be talking about making sure that you're marketing and attracting the right students to the fair, and then what to do when you're actually at the fair. One of the things I want to mention, and I developed the University Recruiting Essentials series with this in mind because it became a trend very early on. The employers who are attending today are a very diverse group. So we have folks who have been in the industry for a long time, folks who maybe have been in human resources for a long time but are just delving into university recruiting. We have people on the phone who have never done any university recruiting at all, so are brand new and may have not done any HR as well. So the moral of the story is there's people all over the board on the call. So if you are an experienced professional, there may be things that I talk about that you think, oh, this is very simplistic, but please just bear with me because I want to make sure that everyone gets at least a baseline of knowledge that they can move forward with. So the first question or the first topic is, are career fairs for your company? So career fairs are a core part of comprehensive university recruiting strategy. They just are. It's something that everyone does. Those that do it best are engaging students really early, building their brand on campus, focusing on diversity, and they have a clear strategy that defines their return on investment. So what's the difference between a job fair and a career fair? Some of you may have gone out and done community job fairs, and inherently in the name, job versus career, there's some difference. So job fairs are typically all types of positions, so not just positions that are professional positions. They often have a focus. Sometimes there are veterans career fairs. They often happen in the community, in a community event. University recruiting is different. It's not about sourcing for a particular applicant to a job or internship in the immediate sense, like a job fair is. Although that is a result of the work that's done, university recruiting is very different in that career fairs are used as a branding opportunity on campus. And you're going to be meeting and seeing a lot of students that are not ready at that moment to apply to an internship or apply to a job. What they're doing is they're researching, exploring, and learning about companies. And that holds true for all of the activities you do on campus for university recruiting. We're going to talk more about what that means for the work that you actually do and the way that you lay out processes. But one of the important things to remember is that recruiters who have been doing university recruiting for a long time, or companies who have had a program for a long time, attract students early as their freshman year. They talk about their brand, they build a pipeline, and they engage students consistently throughout their college career in order to eventually convert them into an intern or a full-time hire applicant, and then the hire. Some even influence diverse candidates in high school, encouraging them to enter the majors, first of all, encouraging them to go to college, and second of all, encouraging them to take majors that are in demand for their diversity requirements. So what do students think about career fairs? So it's interesting because there's two sides to this coin. There's what do students think about it, and then what do employers think about career fairs. So we're going to talk about both, but first we'll talk specifically about what students think. So the research that's been done in the industry shows that career fairs are consistently, year over year, rated by students as the best place to learn about future employers. Students value the events, and they value the employer participation in the events. In the After College Student Survey, consistently, students identified career fairs as an effective way to find out about a company. In both 2012 and 2013, 60% of students identified career fairs as a top way to learn about employers. The only thing that career fairs came in behind was actually applying on the company's website or talking to someone who works at the company. And remember, talking to someone who works at the company should also be something that's being achieved at a career fair. In the NACE student survey, 77, which stands for the National Association of Colleges and Employers, 77% of students surveyed identified career fairs as a tactic that they were using to learn about prospective employers. So we know students want it, and we know students are attending. For the NACE Recruiters Benchmarking Survey, which is the survey that's done of employers doing university recruiting, university recruiters identified the top 2 techniques that are most effective as number 1, relationships with faculty on campus, and number 2, attending career fairs. I'm going to add to this, though, that anecdotally, when you talk to employers, they do say that they don't get a ton of return on investment from the I was going to say from career fairs, but it's not career fairs as a whole. It tends to be the large generic career fairs. Employers get a much higher return on investment from niche career fairs, and they also get a much higher return on investment at the career fairs that they're marketing to the students that they want to attend. And we're going to talk more specifically about how to do that in a few moments. So as a real broad overview, there's some statistics that you're only going to remember one or two things that I say in this whole presentation. And the thing that I really want you to remember, and don't worry because I'm going to remind you, is that career fairs and university recruiting as a whole are about your brand, and it's about attracting the top students. So hiring the intern or the full-time entry-level college grad is a result of these efforts, but not the primary goal of the event you're attending. If you show up at a career fair during students' end of their senior year, say spring of their senior year, and expect to just fill your full-time entry-level graduate positions, you're going to lose out, and you're specifically going to lose out on those top students, because those top students have been courted and have been encouraged and made aware and made familiar with employers' brands, those employers that want to attract that top talent. They've been made aware of their brand since their freshman year in college through a whole variety of different ways. And in my on-campus brand webinar, through all the different types of events, I talk more about it, but scholarships are another way that employers do it, and a whole vast array of activities on campus. So everything you do when deciding whether or not you'll attend a career fair should be related to building your brand awareness with students. So what if you don't have any open jobs right now or open recs? You still need to be attending those career fairs and having a presence on campus. Those companies that have an established program and have invested in university recruiting programs, they don't leave campus when the economy takes a downturn and they don't have any open headcount. They know that it's important to continue to build their brand for when those jobs come back open, and they don't pull their resources out of their university recruiting program. And I've seen, actually, this dates me, but through several economic downturns, I've seen it happen. And then I see when employers return to campus, they have to basically start from zero again and build their brand up in front of students. And all of this is really especially important to remember when you're trying to compete for top, very high in demand majors and the top students. So something else about career fairs and university recruiting as a whole: the companies who are successful at university recruiting and at career fairs have a buy-in and investment from their upper management at their companies. The company and the corporate culture values and believes in college talent as a pipeline to future success. There's often not an immediate return on your university recruiting, and there's almost never an immediate return on a lot of the brand building activities you do on campus. So again, it's not just showing up and getting someone to come and sit in that headcount seat. What it is it's like planting the seeds and reaping the rewards later. Building a brand takes investment, and university recruiting needs investment. And it's not just a monetary investment, but it's also support from management and staff time, encouragement and devotion of line managers to interns and to internship programs, alumni from different people working at your company who are alumni from different universities, being engaged and involved in university recruiting, whether it's attending a classroom presentation, actually being at the career fair booth, being an alumni mentor. All these different types of things take investment. In order to compete with other companies recruiting the same talent you're trying to attract, you have to have that long-term investment in building your brand. And it can really take multiple years and this long-term investment in the process. So companies who understand this and get the support to implement their initiatives are the ones who really have the success competing and winning for that top talent. So where should you go? So you decided that you're going to go to some different career fairs, and maybe you're just going to start out small and attend a few. So established university recruiting programs have clearly delineated sets of schools and programs where they invest. And then deciding what types of events are best for them at those schools is a core part of how they develop their comprehensive strategy. We usually call them tier or target schools. And target schools are often laid out in different tiers, like a pyramid. So I could do a whole webinar just on creating your target schools and then breaking your target schools into tiers and what goes into that, but I'm going to give you a really brief overview. University recruiting programs primarily focus on their top tier, which is a smaller number of schools. They go almost all on campus, and they do lots of high-touch activities. They invest on campus in events like career fairs. They invest in scholarships. They educate students about their brand, their company, and the opportunities at their company, and the type of work the company's doing. It's all about brand. It's all on campus. That's not where you have to start, but just know that's who you're competing against. Target schools and then the tiers that they're broken into typically are created on many measurements, but some of the top measurements are the programs or the majors offered by the school that you're trying to attract or that you see coming down for your pipeline, the geography of the school or the simple location, especially if you're not able to offer any kind of relocation, and then the past return on investment from your events that you've done on that campus. Some companies do have a virtual strategy for schools that are not on their top tiers. So this doesn't invest in the travel requirement or dollars for your budget for travel. And it can be a really effective way. It just needs to be managed well, and again, you need to be marketing and making sure that the right students are there. Because if the right students don't show up, all of the resources you invest are at a loss. So I always encourage people to do a competitive analysis. A big part of determining where you're going is by performing this competitive analysis. Now remember, your top competitors for college talent are not going to be necessarily the same competitors that you're competing with in the consumer market or if you're a B2B company or a product-based company. It's not going to be the same people who you're competing with for your business. You're going to be competing with the people trying to attract the same in-demand majors and the same top students. So that's going to take some research on your part to figure out, first of all, you probably know what your majors are that you want to attract, but then who is also recruiting those majors and where are they going and what type of investment are they making. Now once you figure that out, you make a couple of decisions based on that, and some of this may be determined by your budget, by how new you are at university recruiting. So you may decide to really go in heavy and invest heavily in a top tier school where you have a direct competitor that you know you're losing offers to consistently when you make offers out to students. Or you may choose to avoid that school altogether and attempt to invest heavily in your brand at a different school where you have a better chance of winning the top talent and also getting those top students within your high in-demand majors. Oh, one other quick note I want to make about this. So when you're picking your target schools or your tier schools and you're doing your competitive analysis and you're figuring out where to go, and this happens consistently across the board, one of the drivers of university recruiting is oftentimes where your management went to school, went to university or college. While that can be a very good first of all, way to get investment in your program, your university recruiting program, and it also may be a very valid place to recruit. It's really important to make sure that you're still measuring your ROI, you're making important decisions on whether or not that is the best school for you to go to, and you're not just picking your target schools based upon where management went to college or where they're alum of. Now, leveraging the alumni at your company can often be a serious strength. So taking that into consideration is important, but not just saying, okay, we're going to go to, our top 3 target tier schools are going to be where our CEO and 2 senior vice presidents went to college. So please remember that. And feel free to quote me if you're challenged with that issue right now at your company. So when deciding where to go, there's a bunch of different types of career fairs. There's 2 main types of career fairs that are held on campus. They're traditional events, and there's also those that are held by outside organizations that serve students. So what we're going to look at first is those that are held on campus. So when you determine where you go, you're going to look at your tier school first. However, some other things to consider are geography. Where are most of your positions located? Where's your corporate headquarters? Do you pay relocation? Will students at that school be willing to relocate if you don't pay relocation? And when going on campus or figuring out where to go on campus, there's several types of career fairs. The first is general all major career fairs, and they're typically run for a career center. These are really good for people who are targeting all majors or have general open positions. The next is specific major career fairs that are run by the main career center. So oftentimes the main career center will have STEM, healthcare, business career fairs. There's specific major career fairs run by decentralized career centers. So in other words, the School of Engineering has their own career center and then in turn their own career fair. And nothing is boring about university recruiting. When you're doing your research, you're going to have to figure out this dynamic for every one of your target schools. In addition, there's career fairs that are run by the actual academic departments at some schools. These are often open to employers who are members of that department's corporate affiliate program. So if you have a really academic department at a certain school that's a high target for you, I'd encourage you looking at that, looking at their corporate affiliate programs and their career fairs there. And then there's sometimes diversity career fairs. These can be run by student groups on campus, or they may be in conjunction with the Career Center. So employers who I interviewed when talking about career fairs, they identified the top reason that if they had moved away from on-campus career fairs was that the event itself was organized poorly. So make sure you ask for references. Benchmark with colleagues who attended these career fairs in the past and see where they're receiving the most return on investment. So the next kind of career fair are those run by outside groups, outside of the university. But these are almost always incorporated into a comprehensive university recruiting program, so I wanted to cover them as well. The vast majority of the groups are focused around major, diversity, or both. The events typically happen on both regional and national levels, and based on your university recruiting strategy, you determine which is right for you. In my employer interviews, where many of the employers were focused on diversity and STEM, so I'm owning that there was a high instance in my interviews of people focusing on diversity and STEM. The following organizations were mentioned as part of their strategy. SWE, which stands for the Society of Women Engineers. Enactus, which is a business-directed student group. It used to be called SIFE, Students in Free Enterprise, but it's entrepreneurial students and business students. NSBE, which stands for the National Society of Black Engineers. Out for Work, which is an LGBT group that has a career fair in conjunction with their annual conference. And then a personal favorite, Anita Borg Institute, which is the Grace Hopper Conference, is called, their code name is Celebration of Women in Computing. But basically it's focused on STEM, computer science specifically, and women in that field. One of the other things, if you decide that you're going to go to a conference that attracts college students or has a specific college career fair associated with it, I encourage you to try to get the most bang for your buck out of the event, and some of that may be also doing a presentation. So if you have some exciting work that's happening at your company that would be appropriate for NSBE or SWE or even Grace Hopper, I encourage you to look at the call for proposal time and to try to incorporate some of the folks at your organization who are doing that work. So not someone from university recruiting, but someone from that organization. It's an awesome additional branding opportunity for you to get in front of students and to evangelize your brand. Okay, so you've decided you're going to the fairs, you decided where you're going, and now planning is a really core piece, because there is a lot of planning that takes place. So you have to learn about the fair. If you haven't been to the event before, could you visit the event before you commit? Can you visit in the fall to prepare for the spring event? You want to get the lay of the land, see how things are working, talk to other companies, observe what traffic patterns are like, look at what others have in their career fair booth, who seems to be having success and engagement. Ask questions of the group or the person organizing the event. What's the expected attendance? How many students come? Confirm it's your correct audience. Make sure it's the students that you want to talk with. Ask what they do to ensure that there's attendance and driving traffic. When are the busiest times? Are there lines at the booth? Is there a dress code for employers at the event so that doesn't become a funny, embarrassing situation? Then decide who from your company is going to go, and this can be different for each career fair, especially if they're targeted career fairs. So you want to make sure you're taking people who speak the language of the students that you're attracting at the career fair. Alumni, again, can be a huge advantage in general, but at their alma mater specifically. Decide whether you'll incorporate hiring managers. If you're attending a diversity event, does your company have a diversity group that matches the event? So do you have an LGBT group that does activities or advocacy at your company, and can a representative go to that career fair with you? Also ensure that you take enough coverage for traffic that you learned about when you were doing your research. So students will wait in line to speak to you, but obviously the more students you're able to touch at the event, the better your return on investment. Represent your company culture at your booth. So if the Career Center told you you have to wear a suit, then this may not work, and you may need to figure something else out to do this. But you know, really try to give the feeling of what it's like. Do people suit up every day at your company, or do they come in their board shorts? You know, what are other things that set your company apart? What are things? This is a really interesting statistic. The After College Student Survey came out recently, and the vast majority of students care more about the work that the company does than it being a cool company. So while you should represent your company culture, you should also make sure you're not neglecting talking about the actual work you do and having examples of those things. We also know the millennial research that's out and about. Students also care about social consciousness and the type of company that they're going to go work for and invest their time in. So what differentiates your company? Make sure your messaging is consistent. If you have an advertising agency that you work with, make sure you're running these things by them. And most importantly, do you have interns? Make sure you're testing what your messaging and materials that you're taking and your process of what you're using. Test that with your interns, and what do they think? What's their experience been at your company? What do they think are the most important things that you should be expressing to their peers? Everybody always wants to talk about giveaways. Giveaways, what should we give away at the booth? I think partially because it's one of the fun things that we get to order or spend some budget on. Should you take Angry Red stress balls? And my advisement is going to be no. What we've seen in student research is that one of the things students really don't appreciate is stuff that's going to end up in the landfill. They do appreciate things that they can use, that are practical, that are eco-friendly. So something that has your brand on it but isn't going to just end up in the landfill can be a great little giveaway or benefit or something that they can take with them. I know, I've seen some folks use the screen cleaners that you can stick on the back of your iPad or stick on your back of your phone. That's a great branding opportunity. But there's lots of different ways to get creative with it. Just make sure that you're doing something that is valuable, and you may even want to consider taking the budget you'd be spending on your squeegee balls and spending it on sending another person who is actually doing work that students will find valuable in having that conversation instead of buying giveaways. And then practice. I know nobody really likes to do this, but I do think it's important. Gather those that you've determined will attend. Go over the materials you have at your booth. Have a consistent elevator pitch message. Role play. That's the part nobody really likes to do. Role play with your interns because they're the actual type of folks that you're going to be talking to, especially if you're taking hiring managers and they're not necessarily used to engaging with college students. Make sure everyone knows, this is almost the most important thing, or probably is the most important thing. Make sure everyone knows how you're going to be measuring your return on investment from the event and has the information on how to get the students' contact information or the students' information about themselves into the management tool that you're going to use or the process that you're going to use to keep track of these students and engage them throughout time. So moving on to measuring your ROI, that's actually kind of a perfect intro, because measuring your ROI, because you're building your brand at these on-campus events, especially at career fairs, it's really ephemeral. It can often be hard. It's not the same as just saying, I filled 3 positions. Eventually, that's going to be your long-term stat you're tracking, that you filled 3 positions, but what it is it's building your brand in front of the students you want to attract. Measuring your ROI, in order to do that, it's imperative that you have a way to keep track of the students that you meet. So this isn't just a one-touch thing. You're going to touch the students at the career fair, or maybe that's the first place you meet the students, or maybe this is the 3rd or 4th time you've seen the student. And regardless, you want to know how many times they're interacting with your employment brand. I should also mention that employment brand and consumer brand are different things. Although they can have overlap, they are very different things. So if you haven't thought about that for your company, do some reading and research around that. So what's the difference between an ATS and a CRM? For those of you who haven't been in HR before, an ATS stands for Applicant Tracking System. That's where people actually apply to jobs and internships. A CRM is a customer relationship management tool. Oftentimes it can be used for marketing. It can be something as robust as a whole talent community that's developed as a piece or a portion or developed by the company that develops your ATS. Could be a separate standalone talent community that's developed just for HR to hold passive candidates. Or it could be something as simple as a Google Doc or a Google spreadsheet or an Excel spreadsheet. Could be something in between. Could be a Constant Contact or a MailChimp. It needs to be somewhere that you input students' information and then you continue to market your brand to them based upon the appropriate messaging for their major and the time they're at in their career. So these are the students that you see at career fairs, you see at classroom presentations. You're going to be able to know how many times you've seen them because you're going to go back in and mark that you met them again or saw them again at this other opportunity. You're going to put your marketing hat on and send them relevant content for content marketing to keep them engaged with your brand. One of the things that I always tell university recruiters, and sometimes this is shocking, so don't be scared if this is something you're doing, but I highly encourage you to change this practice if this is what you're doing. The absolute worst thing you can do at your career fair booth is hand a student a piece of paper or a business card or something and tell them to go apply online to your ATS. Several reasons. First reason, students say that's the worst experience that they could possibly have and not have an engaging conversation about the work the company's doing, why they might want to go work there, what types of opportunity the company's looking for. Secondly, a lot of students that you're going to meet are not going to be ready to apply at that moment for a job or an internship. So you just lost a significant percentage of contact information for students who you could be continuing to engage. And then thirdly, with similar context of the second point, you need to track that information, to track your ROI and to not lose leads. So you need to capture that student information at the moment you're there. Sometimes there are iPad apps that you can use. There's different tools that have come out for career fair management that you can use that immediately capture the student's information, and then you can market to them moving forward. So tracking for a long lead time, this is another way about managing your ROI. Because companies are starting as early as senior year in high school or freshman year in college, it's really important to make sure that management knows there's a long lead time in return on investment for university recruiting, and also making sure you track your data and that your data from what you're tracking for your passive candidates who aren't ready to apply yet, they're not really candidates yet, your passive interested people or your targeted people that you want to come and eventually convert to an applicant, that the place you're tracking them, whether it's manual or whether it happens automated, is then talking to your ATS, or you're comparing that information to your ATS to see who did apply, what interactions you had with those people who applied, and then those who converted to full-time hires. The economic downturn that we're coming out of, because so many college students have not yet gotten their first professional position and they may be 2, 3, 4 years out of school, a lot of the employers I talk to are actually still giving credit to the university recruiting program if an alum who is 2 to 3 years out accepts their first professional position with the company, and they can track that they had contact with them on campus and built their brand with them when they were on campus, but either the company didn't have open headcount or whatever the case may be, the student didn't come and take their first full-time position until several years out. The university recruiting program is still claiming that to be a success for their program. So how do you measure this, or how are companies measuring this brand awareness? There's several ways. Student custom surveys at your target schools where you're investing highly, and then also student focus groups. There are multiple consultants that perform this work on behalf of employers. Mary Scott is one of the best known in the industry. She also has lots of great student research that you can learn from. After College also has something called the EPI, or the Employer Popularity Index. So you can look at that to see how your brand measures up on campus for your target campuses. You can compare it to your competitors. You can compare it to other campuses. Okay, so let's talk briefly about attracting the right students. So what's the worst thing that happens? You invest all this research, all this time, you actually get to the career fair, and either no students show up, or none of the students that you really wanted to talk to or attract for your talent pipeline show up. That's where it's your job to let them know you're coming. You are, as a university recruiting professional, you're also a marketer. This isn't a build it and they will come situation. You need to tell them you'll be there, when you'll be there, and what to expect. This is a branding opportunity for you. Do you have a database of past students you spoke to previously? Do you have students who have applied for past internships? Can you invite them to your career fair that you're attending? Do you have a consumer-facing brand where you could let followers or customers know? Once you have your message of why they want to attend and why they want to come and talk to you at the career fair booth, get it out in every possible way. Are you a member of department affiliate programs? Will they tell their students you're coming? Will your current interns tell their friends? Can you do a referral contest for your current interns? Ask organizers of the event how they're informing the students. Do they have a newsletter or an opportunity for you to evangelize what's happening or to advertise your booth? Just as a side note, After College specializes in driving targeted student traffic to employers' events. It's one of the main services we provide. So if you don't have any of those pipelines built up yet, please know that we're here to help you and can definitely do that for you. Leverage student groups and student ambassadors. So keep getting the word out. Ask the student groups that you have connections with to inform their members that you're going to be at a career fair, when and where. Ask the national organizations that you've engaged with to let their student members at your target schools know. Do you have alumni on staff who can help, even if they're not going to be attending the career fair? Do they still have connections with faculty on campus? Do they still have campus organization, fraternity, sorority, student group connections that they could let know? Do you have a student ambassador program? And if you do they know when you're going to be on campus? Do they have your schedule? How are they incentivized to drive traffic to your events? So all of those things, make sure you're not missing anything and make sure you're leveraging every opportunity you have. Use social media. Get the word out even more. Some companies have had success with creating social media buzz. They create games that drive traffic to their booth, like the first so many students get something at the booth when they attend. You know, they get some, whatever, a flash drive or something of value. Ask your interns to be sharing on social media. So work with your agency or your marketing department on literally a marketing campaign for those who you want to attend your event at the campus you want, where they're currently there, and you can message to them. Okay, now you're at the fair. So we're getting there. We're almost done. So now you're at the fair. What are some things to remember? I'm not going to talk so much about this, but remember it's about your brand. And make sure everyone who's there knows it's about your brand. It's not about handing somebody a business card to go look at your website and apply online. It's about talking about your company, talking about the work you do, and evangelizing your employment brand. Again, different than your consumer brand. Make a plan and execute the plan. You've done all this planning. It's one of my favorite sayings. Anybody who's been on one of my teams knows I say it, make a plan and work the plan. So trust in your plan. Make sure everybody knows your plan and that everybody's following along and marching to the beat of the same drummer. That's the only way you're going to be able to track your ROI later. While you're at the fair and immediately after the fair, take note of things that aren't working or didn't work, debrief about it, and then the next fair adapt and adjust, and then work the new plan. Remember top students. It's your job as a university recruiter to maintain relationships with the top students and to nurture those relationships. And the next time you're on campus, take that student out to lunch. That's what your competitors are doing who are getting the offers accepted from the very top students in their in-demand majors. So figure out a way you're going to do that and then nurture that student. I know I went and visited University of Washington the first week of school in the fall, and I was talking to a student who is in the Business Career Center, and she had a lunch scheduled every single day of that week with an employer. It was the first several weeks of school. And I was like, are you serious? She's like, yep. Employers have been contacting me, emailing me, asking me when I could come and have lunch with them. They were coming on campus to do something else, like an information session or a career fair. So this is what you're competing with. Provide real work examples. Don't be afraid to take something. Even if you don't understand it, learn about it, get a piece of paper that explains it, take somebody with you who can talk about the work that's being done at your company. This is what the students want to know. The students want to know what they're going to be affecting. If you're doing something cool like this collapsible bicycle, it doesn't matter if you're at a business career fair trying to attract accountants and marketing students. Those accountants and marketing students ultimately still are going to feel like they're part of this cool work that you're doing. Now, you don't want to talk technically over their head, right? But you can still talk about why they'd want to work there and how the fact that everyone that's working at the company is working towards putting out this awesome, fun, innovative product. Educate on your industry. I'm going to tell a very quick story, which is one of my favorites. I worked with a student who was from the Midwest, and he was a business finance major, and he wanted to be an accountant. He wanted to be a corporate accountant. He wanted to work in corporation, and he wanted to work in the accounting department. So, but wanted to stay in the Midwest. So we were talking and talking about what he could do, what his options were, and I kept saying, you should check out the agricultural industry. And he was adamant. He would absolutely not work in the agricultural industry. And I was saying, well, some of the largest corporations that are in your area, in your state, and in the metro areas where you could feasibly relocate are in the agriculture industry. And he just kept saying, no, what else? How could we talk about something else, change the subject? And finally I said, I want to go back to this. Like, I need to understand what it is. Here, the thing is that he grew up on a farm, and he didn't understand that agricultural companies can have an incredibly professional business, Fortune, 500 type environment that he would be working in. He really thought it was still going to be in his brain. It was like this, farm culture, and he wanted to get away from that. So if you're a large drink manufacturer, this sounds silly, but it's important to let students know they're not coming to fill up the soda machines. That you have all kinds of professional positions. You probably, large drink manufacturers probably hire scientists, So it's important to let students know, and what we assume is automatic information isn't always automatic information. So again, it's about your brand. Make sure that you're building your brand. Make sure that you're measuring how students are engaging with your brand. Please feel free to attend my other University Recruiting Essentials series. They are HRCI credited. And now I'm going to take some questions. You can